Good. It's going, right? Good morning. So a number of years ago, and Dawn and I were in Chicago, where my mother used to live. And we were getting ready to move a bunch of our daughter's possessions to an apartment on the extreme north side of Chicago from the suburb where my mom lived. And so if you knew the terrain of the city, the easiest and quickest way to get from the suburb to north side of Chicago was to go on a street called Euclid. And it basically, to get to your destination, it was like doing two legs of a triangle. So it was not the most direct way, yet it was the easiest and the fastest, and the less stressful. And so my mother's boyfriend, he got out his iPhone. I don't even know if they had iPhones back then. He got out his iPhone. He did something. He Googled the map thing, and I think it was Siri. And Siri suggested this direct, straight route using what was called Touhy Avenue. Good old Touhy Avenue. And if you were a local there and you knew about Touhy Avenue, you would avoid it at all costs. And I said to mother's boyfriend, no, we're not going that way. And he says, no, it's the right way to go. You have to go that way. Why would you go the other way? And that's when my brother chimed in. He says, yeah, why don't you just fight your way down Touhy Avenue? I'll never forget that. Fight your way down Touhy Avenue, because if you had to go down Touhy Avenue, it was always a fight. And go through like 3 intersections where 6 roads meet with the traffic lights, and shopping malls. It was a rough call. So really, when you look at mystical traditions, while they vary, you can usually split them apart into 2 camps. And the first camp, which most of us in the West emulate and think it's the way to go, is where the human existence, the personal, you deny it as much as possible, and you're going for the impersonal. You're going directly for the divine, for the impersonal. And so you use this fortitude. You fight your way down Touhy Avenue. You sit perfectly still, and when something comes up, you go right back to the silence as best you can, and you don't listen to all that stuff. You gut your way through. And for some, since everybody's path, everybody's circumstances, everybody's wiring is different. In fact, I would say that everybody's expression and experience of the divine is slightly different because we're all unique windows for it. And so there are some, depending on their makeup, or if you believe in reincarnation, they've done some work on themselves, they can actually fight their way down Touhy Avenue, and it's not such a big fight. They have the personal stuff has been on some level worked through, and they're able to get still. They're able to surmount over the human stuff and touch this sense of peace. And yet the funny thing about some of them, maybe not all of them, is that once they attain the cosmic consciousness or whatever it is, the impersonal, they get past the human. When they have to deal with the world, they have to take what they've touched out there and bring it back and navigate the human stuff. They have to take the gift that they found and bring it back home and integrate it into the human stuff. So it's almost like they're doing it in reverse. And so we usually look at some of these saints that have done this, Ramana Maharshi being one, where obviously there must have been some sort of integrated aspect of him before he, at 16 years, sat down and decided to feel what it was like to die, and was blasted open as a 16-year-old and immediately felt the pull to go to the mountain Arunachala and sit in a cave, still as could be, with rats gnawing at his legs, and it did not affect him one iota. And then 10 years later, he had to come back and deal with all the people that were asking for him for help. And you can read about that in some of the books where, while the outcome was always right, there was a lot of stumbling around with his students. To where Shiva, what was embraced in the impersonal, came back and moved the human. So then there's the other way, the Euclid way. May not be so direct. Can be difficult. To where the so-called goal is the same. But rather than striving for this peaceful openness, while it may appear on the screen at times, you go right into the pain of being human. So you're sitting in the chair like this morning, and for the most part, at least the experience here was, it was a very, very restless sit. So much so that the cat at some point started to meow and complain because she wanted to be fed. But she was picking up more than just her hungry stomach. Shoulders here locked up. And once the shoulders lock up, there's nothing you can do about it. But be with them locked. And so, rather than trying to surmount all this restlessness that should not be happening, there must be something wrong with me, I'm not getting it, you go right into the intensity of it. Oh, this too. This too. This is being with itself too. You start with the human stuff. You're with whatever is being truly felt in the moment. And the resistance comes up and the mind says, this isn't spiritual, this isn't the way I'm supposed to do it. There must be something I'm missing. Oh, basically the mind doesn't want to go there. So you go there. You're the felt sense of it. The personal gets embraced. And the funny thing about it is, when the personal gets embraced, there's this softening. And then the impersonal begins to open up. Because anytime something is embraced, you feel its fluidity. And you begin to feel that which is doing the embrace, that which is doing the holding, which is why it softens.
Okay.
So where was I?
On Euclid or?
Euclid. We were on Euclid Avenue. That's what we were before everything crashed and burned.
We're going into the intensity.
We were going into the intensity. That's what we were doing. So the thing about going, okay, this is what's on the screen, this is what's being felt. So be it. Let me feel the rawness of it. Let me anchor into the intensity rather than the story about it that says it's bad or wants to fix it. And usually, and I would say always, although sometimes the mind will put up a good fight, which usually, if you're noticing increasing intensity, it's because the mind is bouncing away from it. But when you use it as your friend, as your anchor, it gets you present. There's a softening. Because anytime we don't fight something, we get slightly larger. We feel our being. And if that were not the case, one complete embrace of the intensity if all there was this mind, which is just reacting to it, in the complete embrace of intensity, if all there was this mind, if that's all you had, I guarantee you, you'd explode into a million pieces and disintegrate. Because that is what the mind believes what will happen. It is a contraction around something that is natural and open and fluid, like a water fountain. And you're the existence for this water fountain. And your being is holding it, not your individual idea of you. You're letting you hand it over. You're collapsing into your being. So it can be very, very tricky. You know, I was working yesterday afternoon with someone on Skype, and this person, she had a very, very bad day dealing with bureaucracy, and information got lost with a credentialing process that she was applying for that she gave them months ago. And she began by telling me the story, and out of nowhere, which is usually not the case, I stopped her and I said, why don't you go right to what's disturbing you? Which didn't work too well. I was going to fight my way down Touhy Avenue with her. And because there was an openness and present there was immediately in that moment realizing we were going down the wrong road. And so I stopped and I said, okay, tell me your story. Let's start there. So she told me the story, and then we dived into the intensity beneath it, which was all about, I'm not being listened to. I'm alone. It's hopeless. I'm not being listened to. And I said, how interesting. Here, this one, in working with you, immediately took the reflective stance of not listening to you. But if you turn it around and you feel the pain that's there, you're the one that's not listening to you. And the outside is trying to tell you that, to look in, to see that you're not listening to this pain that is trying to speak to you. So you can see the complication from this angle here, this one working with her, totally succumbed to the same thing, to be a reflective mirror and not listening to her either. So you have to keep listening and being with that intensity. So, bottom line, going back to this person I was working with, she got it. She needed to listen to this pain that she wasn't listening to. And out of that, you could just feel, even on Skype, her form just relax and soften. And she felt her bigness. Maybe just a little stretched around it. Not the most comfortable thing. And that is what it's like to go down Euclid Avenue. And I really think for most of us, especially in the West, is the way to go. So you just embrace whatever comes up. Sort of like toward the end when Ruthie, the cat upstairs, started to meow. You could feel a lot of the forms in the room getting restless, including this one. And in that embrace, while it was tense and restless, there was this richness about it. This soupy, gluey richness about it. Because I could feel it was being restless. I would not want to miss that for all the world. Okay, so we'll open it up before this thing shuts down again. I think the recording is salvageable with some splicing.